Hello, welcome to this edition of Footprints. I'm Bob Jones.
This idea of being a bridge I think is very, very important.
A translator, university teacher, linguist, jazz musician, crosstalk performer. David Moser has taken on various roles in his exploration of his life, professions and cultures. But these various roles originate from his passion and dedication to bridge Chinese and U.S. cultures. In this edition of Footprints, we talk to this multi-talented man to delve into his experience in China and his journey as an expert in the Chinese language and culture.
我叫莫大伟，我来自美国，我祝小朋友玩得开心。
This is a clip of the crosstalk performance given by David Moser and another 3 foreigners in the lively televised Spring Festival Gala produced by China Central Television in 1999. The crosstalk, a Chinese-style talk show, was about the 4 foreigners' personal experience in celebrating Spring Festival or Chinese New Year, presented in an amusing way. Moser's appearance in the Gala, a very popular TV show, marked a milestone in his lifelong association with Chinese language and culture, which dates back to when he was a teenager. Moser was born in the state of Kansas, in central United States in 1954, and grew up in the Midwestern region of the country. When he was in high school, there were foreign college students in his hometown of Oklahoma City, and as a young boy, Moser had lots of opportunities to interact with them.
So I learned a lot about Chinese cooking and a little bit of Chinese language. In fact, the first Chinese I ever learned was not ni hao ma, it was 吃不到不吐不到皮. Of course, I said it very badly, but they found it very funny, and so that was my first encounter with Chinese culture. And I guess it just gave me a kind of curiosity about China that stayed with me.
His interest in Chinese language and the country stayed with him after he went to college, where he learned music.
I was doing a master's degree in music at Indiana University. And at the same time, because of my interest in Chinese language, I was also studying Chinese language by myself, just making some Chinese friends and trying to speak Chinese with them. But for no reason, no goal, no idea of why I was doing this. But I made a friend of a professor there who wrote one of the first books about artificial intelligence. This is back in 1980. And he found out that at Peking University, at Beida, they were translating his book into Chinese. So he said to me, look, I know you're learning Chinese and you can speak and read some Chinese. Please go to China and join the translation team at Peking University, because I want to make sure they translate my book correctly. So he was concerned about his book. So he said, I will pay for your plane ticket. I will pay for your dorm room and everything. Just go there and help with the translation. So in a very strange way, I had an opportunity to go to China. And this was 1986. So there I was at Peking University with not very good Chinese, actually, but enough Chinese that I could read the text and to find any English mistakes. And it was quite amazing that I would have such an opportunity just on the basis of my very beginning Chinese. But that changed my life. I became so interested in China and Chinese that I just decided to stay there and keep learning the culture and the language and making China my object of study.
His first visit to China was an eye-opener for the young man. The country was in the initial stage of economic takeoff, just years after the launch of the reform and opening up policies.
This was the beginning of the reform and opening up, the 改革开放, right? So China had opened up and there was a lot of new things there, but basically it was still the same China of the 1960s and 70s. My first impression was bicycles everything was bicycles. There were very, very few cars, and to go anywhere, you had to take a bus or you had to ride a bicycle. We had traffic jams, but they were bicycle traffic jams, not car traffic jams. The conditions were not as very modern. They were still, cooking and doing everyday activities with sort of earlier technology, but it was very clear that things were changing very fast. And everyone was very excited and hopeful, very upbeat, because things had opened up.
He reminisces about his good old days on the campus of Peking University, one of the best higher learning institutes in China. He made friends there and grasped each and every opportunity to learn and absorb the Chinese language and culture.
There were more and more foreigners who were coming in. The Peking University students that I was working with, so they were very happy to make friends with foreigners. It was very exciting for everyone, and I think we were all learning from each other. They were teaching me a lot about China, and I was teaching them a lot about America. And it was a wonderful time, really. Nobody could know what would happen, what the future of China would be. But it was very clear that it was going to be very important and it was going to be amazing. It was very clear that the changes were going to be incredible, and they were.
The translation project lasted for several years. As a result, Moser came to stay in China intermittently while working on his doctoral degree at the University of Michigan in the United States.
So from 1986 to about 1992, I was going back and forth constantly. So yeah, I had a lot of chances to see what was going on. So that is how I was able to get a PhD at the same time that we were translating this book.
After he received his PhD degree, Moser found a job in China to pursue his studies on the country and the culture that he is passionate about.
So I immediately got a job at the Beijing Foreign Studies University, or they call Beiwai. Boy, for me, I was in heaven because I was so interested in the Chinese language and translation. And here I was with some of the best graduate students in China, teaching them about translation. But I have to say, they actually taught me much more than I taught them because they knew both Chinese and English very well. I would give them assignments and they would hand them to me, but I would actually learn more from them than they learned from me. So I was very grateful to Beiwai to give me a chance to improve my translation skills.
While busy with teaching, Moser continued to improve his spoken Chinese in his spare time. As the internet was still in its early stage of development in the early 1990s, there were no easily available language learning materials as people could get today from the cyberspace.
So you had to learn Chinese just by listening to people talk and by reading books and watching TV, right? So it was very difficult back then for a foreigner to learn Chinese. My spoken Chinese was okay in everyday ordinary life. I could say a lot of things and make myself understood. To speak more complex situations, such as giving a lecture, was difficult.
Moser persisted and found a seemingly clumsy but effective way.
The Chinese textbooks that I could get, either in the U.S. or in China, were very boring. They were so simple and silly and overly polite, and it was not natural Chinese. I mean, it was, I really need to find something that's more interesting than this. Nowadays, there are many very good methods for teaching Chinese, very, very good methods. Back then, there was nothing. And so I just sort of made my own method. I would ask my Chinese friends, can we have a conversation and let me record it on a tape recorder? So we did that, and then I would go home and listen to the recordings and write down the characters and study them. So I made my own conversation exercises, and it was real Chinese, and it was actual people expressing their lives and talking about everyday things. So I found that to be much quicker and faster and more effective, to be listening to real Chinese people just talking. And I learned a lot from that.
As China is vast, people from different regions speak Chinese with different accents, and sometimes the difference in accents confused him, but also added fun to his learning experience.
One thing I didn't know at the time was the different kind of regional accents. So people from the south, people from the north, people from Guangdong province. Wow, I thought, is this the same language? Because sometimes the pronunciation was so different. I told someone, that I was studying Chinese philosophy, and he told me in Chinese that he was studying a philosopher. And the way I heard it, he said, I heard it as 我研究脑子. And I thought, 脑子? That means brain. He was saying 老子, the Tao Te Ching. I was thinking he said he was researching the brain.
As he delved deeper into the Chinese language and culture, Moser came across crosstalk, known as xiangsheng in Chinese, a kind of stage comedy similar to the stand-up talk show.
Some Chinese person said to me, you should listen to xiangsheng, crosstalk, because that's very funny and very interesting, and it has lots of humor. So I began to buy some tapes, and I thought, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I'm looking for, because it's very, very funny, and it has lots of Chinese culture, history, dialects, all kinds of things, puns, humor. So I started to listen to these tapes and to sort of write them. And it was because of this that I actually was able to meet a Beida professor named Wang Jingshou, who was an expert in Qu. So he was very happy to meet me and to help me learn about this crosstalk, because he was an expert.
Through Professor Wang Jingshou, Moser started to get involved in the performance and study of this unique Chinese art of comedy. He got to know Da Shan, or Mark Roswell, a Canadian who lived in China and performed crosstalk on TV and became well known.
Da Shan turned out he was at Beida at the same time I was. So I actually met him, and I knew Wang Jingshou. I wrote a paper in English introducing xiangsheng to Western audiences. I think my paper is probably the first article in the world that explained xiangsheng to foreign audiences. So this Wang Jingshou was very happy that I was doing this. And then he said, Da Wei, he was a very funny guy. Da Wei, that was his voice. He said, you should go on TV too, because your Chinese is good enough and you could go on and do xiangsheng on TV. And for a long time I said, no, 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 no. I'm an academic, I'm a nerd, I'm just a teacher, I'm just a scholar, I'm not a performer. No, I don't want to do it. But he sort of talked me into it. And so I ended up I went on TV for the first time, I think in 1994. And so it started there. And then from there, I began to meet some xiangsheng performers. And I became a student of Ding Guangquan. And from then on, I was in the xiangsheng world doing xiangsheng with Ding Guangquan. So that's how I got into xiangsheng, also because I was looking for more interesting Chinese language materials. It turned into a new part of my Chinese involvement.
From then on, Moser made time from his full-time job to practice and perform crosstalk all over China and on TV with Ding Guangquan, a master of crosstalk, whom Moser also refers to as Ding Lauscher.
But it was difficult for me because I couldn't devote my full time to it. I was still teaching. But I loved it. It was more fun than anything that I was ever doing. And it was challenging. It was very hard. I always would forget the lines. Just say, Wang's her, and Ding Laoshe would help me. He was very good with foreigners, and he would sort of help me get through it. So I was not very good at memorizing the lines, but he was very good at helping me. It was great. It was one of the most fun periods of my time in China.
In early 1999, Moser came to a highlight point of his involvement in the world of crosstalk. He, Da Shan, and another two foreigners were asked to perform on the stage of the Spring Festival Gala, produced and televised by China Central Television, a widely watched annual TV show during Chinese New Year celebrations.
So they wanted to do a xiangsheng, but it was for people, so that's a special kind of xiangsheng called a chunkou. It means a group of mouths speaking. So it's still 相声, but it's 4 people instead of 2. And of course, the director for the skit, for the 相声, was Ding Lao Shi, because he was a teacher for all of us. So he was not only our teacher, but he helped write the script, and he directed it, and he rehearsed it with us.
Under the guidance of Ding Guangchuan, Moser and his partners started rehearsing for the performance 1 month before the live show.
Every week having many rehearsals, and every time we rehearsed, they changed the script. Every time. So every time we rehearse again, the script is changed. So you would learn all these lines, and they would cut it and rewrite the whole thing. So we were always learning a new script. So it was really, really arduous. It was really hard.
On February 15th, 1999, the eve of the Chinese New Year, the CCTV Spring Festival Gala show was on. The crosstalk skit, given by Moser and his 3 partners, was the 3rd performance of the whole show. He recalls that being on that stage was a terrifying experience.
Nervous is not the right word for it. It's more like terrified. We were also aware that this is a live broadcast. We cannot make a mistake. There are at least 800 million people watching right at that moment. And then, of course, the next day it would be shown again overseas, and so another 100 million would be seeing it the next day overseas. And so every mistake you made will be seen by 1 billion people. Right? You can't imagine how scary that is. It's just terrifying.
Although terrified at being on that stage, Moser and his partners ended up handling their performance quite well.
We were actually happy that we had spent so much time memorizing the script, because by the time we had done it 1,000 times, we almost could not make a mistake because it was just tattooed on our heads practically, So yeah, none of us made any mistakes because we learned it so well. It was very fun, and I couldn't believe how the audience loved it so much. They were applauding and laughing and everything. And of course, we had rehearsed this for a month, and we never heard people laughing. Nobody laughed at it because it was always the TV crew, the director, random people. We would just say their lines and nobody ever laughed. And then suddenly we were on stage and everyone was laughing. And I went, wow, gee, this maybe is funny, actually. People might find this funny. So yeah, that was very exciting to hear actual laughter.
After his performance, he became famous. A taxi driver in the street of Beijing would recognize him, and he has been well known in China as Mo Da Wei. In addition to crosstalk, his talent, energy, and interest have led him to undertake many other activities, such as joining a jazz band in Beijing and playing the piano.
I became a sort of a part of the Beijing jazz world, the Beijing jazz scene. And for me, that was also a lot of fun, because I thought after giving up my music career that I could really never play music again in public. But here was this opportunity in China. There was a place called the CD Cafe, and we would play jazz every Saturday night. It was a lot of fun, and I also felt like that was an example of me being a bridge between foreign culture and Chinese culture. It was very nice to be a bridge who could come here to China, learn from China, but also be able to teach or bring this music to the Chinese musicians.
Although he really enjoyed playing music and performing crosstalk, Moser says he only treated them as his hobbies.
If I were really a great jazz master, then I would have never come to China, and I'd be in the U.S. being a famous jazz musician there. So I wasn't really good enough to be a really famous jazz musician. So it could only be a hobby. And also the same thing with crosstalk. I mean, crosstalk it's interesting to see foreigners doing it, but it will never be a career. I don't think I would want to do just one of those things for a career. I think it was more important that I do all of those things, sort of bringing those two cultures together with humor and with music was more important to me than being famous or rich or anything like that.
In recent years, he has focused his efforts on enhancing cultural exchanges through his translation and academic work, and he says he always would like to be a bridge between Chinese and U.S. cultures.
I even would translate some xiangsheng pieces into English so that I could perform them in the United States and let some people understand what xiangsheng is about. My big interest in the academia is translation. For me, translation is such an important and amazing area. And in a way, all of those art forms also involve translation. You have to translate the music into the new culture. And of course, you have to make some changes. You can't just directly translate xiangsheng into English, and you can't just directly translate American jazz into Chinese, right? So you have to do a translation, and that's what's interesting to me.
In 2002, he quit his full-time job at the Beijing Foreign Studies University. Since then, he has been working at the Capital Normal University, teaching translation theories, linguistics, Chinese and Western cultures, as well as cross-culture communication. In 2016, he published his book, A Billion Voices, China's Search for a Common Language, which traces the history and essence of Putonghua, or Mandarin, China's common spoken language. Besides academic research, he has also participated in an educational exchange program which brought students from the United States to study at the Chinese university that he works for.
I think for at least maybe 10 years or so, I was teaching American students every semester from American universities, teaching them about Chinese history, Chinese culture, and giving them internships and trips, field trips, and so forth. That was a wonderful time for me because it was my chance to actually be a bridge in the other direction. To be teaching China to Americans was very much fun. And I would have to say, the students I taught, many of them really became addicted to China. I mean, we call it, they were bitten by the Chinese bug. It means they just became fascinated with China.
But unfortunately, the educational exchange program ended during the COVID-19 pandemic, and Moser says he is trying to bring it back.
I think it's very important that we get more American students into China. And so right now, that's my biggest goal. That's my biggest task, is to try to figure out how to entice more American students to go to China, stay there for a semester, 2 semesters, a year, study, learn the language. That's very important. Learn the language. But most important, make Chinese friends. Because you already have hundreds of thousands of Chinese that have already gone to the United States and are there now, or go to Great Britain. They're undergoing that process of understanding the culture inside the culture. But there's not enough Americans that are coming to China to learn China from the inside, from the way it feels inside China. So my goal right now for the new year and for the coming future is to not only be a bridge, but to get people to cross that bridge into China and stay in China for a long time and learn the language and make friends. I think that's really important right now.
Teaching, translating and traveling, Moser, now in his 70s, is as busy and energetic as ever. This multi-talented scholar takes it as his own mission to bridge Chinese and US cultures. Right now, he is editing a book about the relations between languages and people's thinking styles. To be specific, the book tries to answer the question, do we think differently in Chinese and English?
So there were 12 papers, 12 scholars, and then I have a chapter. So right now I'm working on editing this book. Obviously, we don't think there's any big difference in the way that Chinese people might think and that English speakers might think. But there might be small ways in which the language sort of makes you see the world in a little bit of a different way. Just to give an example, English is sort of a subject-predicate language. So you have a subject and then you have a predicate. For many, many years, or maybe centuries, people thought, well, Chinese must be the same. It must have a subject and predicate. But it turns out Chinese is probably maybe not that way. The Chinese is more like a topic and a comment. So first of all, you isolate on something as for this thing, and then you do a comment. So for example, if I want to say in English, the nostril on the nose of the elephant is small. So this is the nostril is a 鼻孔, nose is 鼻子. In Chinese, you can just say a topic, 大象鼻孔小. So you have these three topics, starting from the big thing to the smaller thing to the very smallest thing, and then you have a comment. What about the 鼻孔小, right? So this is a way of thinking. It's a way you organize your thoughts. It's like, what do we put first, and then what do we do next, right? So that's what I'm working on now. For me, is actually translation. You translate languages, but you also have to translate culture. Culture needs to be translated. And it's part of what I've been working on for the last 40 years.
In fact, being bilingual and cross-cultural has not only defined his public and professional life. In his private life, this feature is also evident.
I would have to say also, I live in an environment where Chinese and English get switched a lot because my wife is Chinese. My daughter was born and raised in Beijing, but she speaks perfect English and very good Chinese. So in my home, when the three of us are together, I do not know what language we are speaking. It's a mixture of everything. I mean, the way the two of them talk, it's like my daughter will say, Ma, what a backpack 在哪儿? And she will say, 不是昨天你 kitchen table, 你这个 homework 就是旁边不就是吗? No, I can't find it. What's a banana? You know, so they just English, Chinese, English. It's just, that's how they talk. Mixture, total mixture. Sometimes as a linguist, that makes me frustrated because please, let's just choose one language today and we'll speak another language tomorrow. But I can't stop it. I cannot stop it. And for them, it's just natural. It's just the normal way to talk.
Right now, Moser is spending his winter vacation with his family in Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. He says he feels a festive atmosphere there, as the Chinese New Year of 2025, which falls on January 29th, is approaching.
These few days, you go to the shopping malls and you go out around Bangkok, and you see Chinese characters and Year of the Snake all over the place. Lots of Chinese culture here, lots of Chinese people here. So it's kind of a festival that they also celebrate here to some extent.
For the coming Chinese New Year, Moser says he and his family will watch the Spring Festival Gala to be presented and televised by China Media Group on the night of January the 28th from their apartment in Bangkok.
Of course, we will definitely watch it, yes. My wife and I are here. My wife is Chinese, and so we will definitely watch it that night. We have a big screen TV in the apartment here, so we'll definitely turn it on and watch it, and probably be eating jiaozi while we watch.
Jiaozi are delicious dumplings popular in China, especially in its northern regions. The food is a small mass of leavened dough that is boiled or steamed and served in soups or stews. Moser is a foodie, and he says he loves Chinese cooking. Like many Chinese people, eating jiaozi and watching the Spring Festival Gala has become an essential part of his celebration of the Chinese New Year. And he is full of expectations about the upcoming TV show, which he says is a challenge to put on.
I look forward to seeing the Spring Festival Gala because it's always a challenge, I think, each year to have a balance where some of the acts and the entertainment has to appeal to the young people, but then you also have to have songs and things that appeal to the older people. And you have to have things that appeal to the children, and something that appeals to teenagers, and something that appeals to foreigners, and something that appeals to music fans, and something that the people that want to hear crosstalk no matter what, and so on and so forth. You have to please all these different kinds of people in the audience in one show. How are they going to do this? You know, otherwise everyone would turn off. They said, I don't like this kind of thing. They turn it off. So you have to have acts and you have to have entertainment that every aspect of Chinese population can appreciate and to be entertained by. So it's a very difficult show to plan and to do. So we'll see.
For the coming Year of the Snake, according to the Chinese lunar calendar, Moser is full of hopes and wishes.
In the recent months, I thought, Year of the Snake, what could be good about that? I mean, I don't really know how to make, because in my mind, the snake is kind of a scary animal. And I think, but the more I understand the snake, the more I think this is a perfect time, a perfect situation to have the Year of the Snake. Because the Year of the snake is supposed to be a very smart, flexible, able to change and to adapt to new situations. You know, that's kind of the idea of having this ability to think in very flexible ways. My hope for the world is that the Year of the Snake, that maybe we can find new solutions to old problems, or new ways of seeing the world, maybe more flexible ways to interact, more flexible ways to cooperate, more creative ways to cooperate. The Year of the Snake maybe is a year that we can sort of rethink everything, to sort of let's try some new things here instead of the same old solutions or the same old way of doing things. I think this is a great year to think that way. Let's do something new. Let's break the old habits and make new friends, learn new things, adopt new methods. This is what I think the year 2025, Year of the Snake, should be. So that's what I hope, that the world will take that as a message.
According to his experience and observations, the Spring Festival, or the Chinese New Year, has become more and more accepted around the world. And he applauds that, saying festivals are an important part of people-to-people and cultural exchanges.
I think festivals are very important, and to share in each other's festivals, to share in the festivals of another country, means you also share in those human feelings. It's all about bonding, family love, and it's important that we do it together. That's very important. The millions of Chinese people in the U.S. right now, the Spring Festival is much more apparent to everyone. So everyone's aware of the Chinese New Year, and they're aware that it's the Year of the Snake, and they're aware of these things, and they know that there are these Chinese food. You know, many Americans love Chinese food, and so they're happy to take part in the festivals. They may not know how to make dumplings, but they can sure, order Chinese food from the restaurant or something like that. So, I mean, it's becoming another worldwide festival, definitely.
Moser wished everybody a happy Chinese New Year by making a pun based on the shi, the pronunciation of snake in Chinese. He said,
我祝你什么都有,
which means, I wish you all the best. With that, I wish all our listeners a happy and prosperous Chinese New Year of the Snake. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Jones. As always, please follow us on your favorite podcast platforms. Just key in Footprints and you can find more stories anytime, anywhere. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.